Sometimes I feel like Hannah may not be the only one that needs someone to teach her how to talk. I think that might be me too sometimes. I am particularly excited today about what I believe God has for us as a church family. So I'm going to ask those of you who normally take this time to take a nap, if you'd sort of stay awake with me for a little while, turn on your brains, and let's really dive into what God has for us. Because today I want us as a church family to begin looking toward the future of our church. And it's time to engage in some new conversations and begin to pray through what God has for us, both in the short term and the long term of our church family. So I'm really excited about where he's going to begin to lead us starting today. I don't know if you're like us, Emily and I, but every time we go on vacation, you go someplace that's fun or exotic. Usually for us, it's near water somewhere of some flavor or some kind. We're just kind of water people. And you always have this thought, I could just leave it all behind and I could probably figure out a way to make this work, And Emily's a teacher, I'm a pastor, so maybe one day I'll get to pastor some church that has coastal in the name of it, like Coastal Baptist Church or Lakeside Baptist or, whatever, something near the water. And she's a teacher, so she could teach the little water kids and the little ocean kids, and we'd just be happy, and we'd, find a little cottage out by the water somewhere and just disappear, and all of life's stresses would just go away. You ever have these kind of thoughts before? Yeah. Some people are, no, I don't like the water. I'm mountain people. I want to build my little cabin in the mountains, and I just want to go up there and sit on my side of the mountain, and I just want to disappear where nobody can find me, nobody can talk to me, and all of life's stresses would go away. Anybody ever have these kind of thoughts before? Yeah? It's hard to go on vacation and not think that way. Well, look at what Jeremiah says in Jeremiah chapter 9. Turn with me quickly to Jeremiah 9. Jeremiah 9, verse 2, this will be on the screen as well. It says, "Oh, that I could go away and forget my people and live in a traveler's shack out in the desert." He wants to build the first tiny home. He's a man before his time, right? He's a man ahead of his time. In all the stress and all that God's doing and everything that's happening around me, and I'm so broken by it, I'm so overwhelmed that the truth is, if I'm being honest with God, if I'm being honest with everybody else, I just want to go out into the desert somewhere and just build a tiny home and just be by myself and leave all the stress behind. Look, he gets frustrated with the people around him. He says this, "I want to go out there, I want to build my tiny home because they're all adulterers and they're all a pack of treacherous liars." You ever just been sort of fed up that way like Jeremiah? Anybody sympathize with Jeremiah? I had to laugh out loud as I was studying and reading through Jeremiah and came across this verse. It's probably not one that you typically hear a lot of sermons on. Because usually as pastors, we're trying to encourage our folks to stay. We're not really looking for excuses to give them to go. But even Jeremiah found himself at his wit's end. Well, a few weeks ago, we studied, or we talked about, it was an article that was published. It turned into a book. It was called The Big Sort. And the basic theme of the article that turned into a book, and you can still find it, the book was published in 2008, so it's still relatively modern data. The basic premise of the book was this, that as transportation has become cheaper and easier, technology has progressed, and cities have become more crowded, people began to move out of the cities back into the suburbs and into the places around because it wasn't as challenging to travel back and forth to work. So you made your money in the city, and then you could live out in the suburbs. And with technology and transportation and those things, that became a workable process, where 100 years ago, it was really more difficult to do that. Well, what people began to do, whether it was intentionally or unintentionally, conscious or subconscious, that's up for debate, but they began putting themselves in their own pockets. They began isolating themselves or resegregating ourselves and making sure that we live in neighborhoods next to people who think like we do, work like we do, have the same socioeconomic class that we do, vote like we do, drive the same cars that we drive, eat the same foods that we eat, and enjoy the same TV shows. And so we've all kind of put ourselves, it's called the great sort or the big sort. And we went from the diversity of the city where we're all forced to live in and among each other, and we began to spread out again, and we began to segregate ourselves in a variety of ways. And that goes far beyond race. When you start saying words like segregation and those things, we immediately think about race, but there's a lot of dividing lines beyond that. And so we began to sort of do that. Again, the debate is we don't know if this was intentional or unintentional, conscious, subconscious, we're not sure. But it's just sort of what the data has shown has been happening over the last several decades. Well, then COVID hit. And there's a lot of things we're still understanding about COVID and those, year and a half, 2 years of isolation and shutdowns and, our way of life sort of ground to a halt. But one of the things that happened is that remote work, working from home, working over the internet, communicating over the internet, video conferences and those things became widely acceptable. So businesses started realizing how much money it costs them to have their workers, on their campus. Because when you're there, they got to provide you electricity. They got to provide you space to work. You're going to, need to go to the bathroom and use up water and resources. It costs a lot of money to have you in an office building. Well, it's a lot cheaper if you stay at home and flush your own toilets, right? And we can work on our laptops, our computers, and that became more acceptable. In fact, many businesses, even to this day, are only requiring that you be in the office 2-3 days a week and have given you a lot of freedom. It also saved money on air travel and travel expenses because now I can just log into a Zoom meeting that's become acceptable and I don't have to buy the $500 plane ticket and spend, 3 days traveling back and forth for the 2-hour meeting. It saved us a bunch of money. And as it became culturally acceptable, we're kind of moving into this new reality of what it means to go to the office and work or not go to the office. We go to the home office. So because of remote work and we're able to work from home, guess what? Suddenly for some people, it doesn't really matter where home is. We have people in our church family that are that way. They work primarily online. They work all over the country, in some cases all over the world, but they do it from their couch in Forest Park. And so it's a natural progression. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but what this reality has done is it has accelerated those trends that we were already seeing in the big sort. And so people are moving further and further away. Emily and I went down to eat Friday night at Buckner's. Who loves Buckner's? Man, that's like a religious experience when you go down there and eat their wonderful fried chicken. So we went down there, kind of related to this conversation. It was the first time in a while we had actually eaten in the restaurant because during COVID, they got pretty good at takeout. We got kids, it's hard to go in the restaurant, so we've been eating it a good bit, but we've been taking it home. Well, for the first time in a while, we actually drove down there and ate in the restaurant. Well, I noticed in our trip down there, now remember, when I was a kid, Buckner's is way down at, south of Spalding County, exit 205. That was the middle of nowhere. And it's still like almost the middle of nowhere. It's not quite the middle anymore, but it's still, things have kind of developed around it. I noticed on our trip down there, in the middle of these cornfields and what I would call the middle of nowhere, I saw 3 new churches being built. 3 new churches. One of them I think was new. 2 of them were churches that had relocated. In other words, they had followed their people as their people moved and migrated. Now, this is in the middle of a cornfield in Pike County. And if you grew up around here, you know Pike County's some desert wasteland between here and Macon, right? There's nothing there. But that's where people are moving. They're moving further and further away from the city, getting out of the neighborhoods into a little bit of land and some property, getting away from all the people, and we're slowly but surely building our traveler's shack in our own little desert. Well, as you move, you cut ties to your roots, to your history, to your traditions, and many people, as they've relocated, have also left church. We've been studying this. This is what has kind of been the foundation of our conversation, is these trends. And we've seen this big trend in people who claim to be Christians but aren't actually actively participating in church. And so that causes all kinds of problems. And so what we've seen is these trends were already in place, but COVID has certainly accelerated them. And many of you probably have friends or family that recently have moved further and further away from the city. We're seeing that all over the place. And related to that is the decline in church attendance. Well, Daniel K. Williams recently did a study. You can find kind of the write-up of his study in Christianity Today. And so he says this, he's discovered this in the data. He said this category of people, and what's the category? They are lapsed and non-church attending evangelicals. So these are the people who used to come to church. They don't go to church anymore, but they still claim Christianity. But they've moved off. They've followed these trends. This category of lapsed and non-church attending evangelicals, listen to this, are now the largest religious body in the South. The largest, most significant religious group in the South are evangelicals who used to go to church. Interesting. Well, what does he say about them? And you can read the whole article. It's in Christianity Today. But what they discover is that this group that has built their traveler's shack in the desert and have disconnected, they are now the largest religious body in the South, but they are also lonelier, more disconnected, angrier, and more suspicious of institutions. And if you don't believe me, log on to Facebook. This group of non-church attending evangelicals are now the largest religious body in the South. They are also lonelier, more disconnected, angrier, and more suspicious of institutions. Why? Well, I think it's this. As people serve self more and more, they are not only abandoning God, but they are abandoning their sense of purpose. They're losing their sense of purpose and their identity. And so as we flounder with a lack of foundation, with no sense of purpose anymore, and we've chased the things that we think will make us happy, and then they don't make us happy, what do? We get more and more bitter and disenfranchised. They are lonelier, more disconnected, angrier, and more suspicious of institutions. So if the problem is that we've abandoned God and we've lost our sense of purpose, then I think we need to ask the fundamental question. What is our purpose? What is our purpose? Well, there's been a lot of people endeavor to answer this. The Westminster Shorter Catechism gives one of the most clear and simple answers to it. The first question out of the gate in this old catechism is, what is the chief end of man? In other words, what is our purpose? What are we here for? What is the point? And they say this, some of you will know this. The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Anybody heard the Westminster Catechism? Yeah. What is the chief end of man? It's to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Jesus Himself gives us a sense of purpose in Matthew 28. He says this, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you." Well, just reading between the lines there, I think it's pretty difficult to make disciples if you don't live near anybody or talk to anyone other than your family. You see, we've isolated ourselves. We've removed people out of our lives that don't think like we do, talk like we do, vote like we do, drive the same cars that we drive, or listen to the same music, or wear the same clothes. And that is fundamentally opposed, diametrically opposed to the very concept of making disciples. It's the mission that we're intended to live out, to go and make disciples of all the people that think like we do and act. No, that's not what it said. I'm sorry, I misread that. Go and make disciples of all nations. You know, that's one of my attractions to the town of Forest Park, because we got a little bit of everybody here. You don't have to travel to the end of the world to reach many of our nations, because a lot of them live right here on our streets and in our neighborhoods. So go and make disciples. That is our purpose. We are designed to walk with God, to walk in obedience with God, to glorify Him in all that we do and follow His will and His ways throughout our lives. So if you've lost your sense of purpose, I bet your relationship with God has been weakened over time. So here's what I want us to do. As a church, I want us to start praying about our purpose. When you talk about organizations, there's three terms that come up. There's mission, values, and vision. So our vision, our purpose, is the thing that we're aiming for. Well, I've used the metaphor a lot in talking about our church. I use the metaphor of a boat or a ship a lot. It's kind of an easy way to talk about the things that we've experienced over the last few years and sort of where we are. And I think it gives us a good mental concept. Some of you I know because you've either come to my office, sent me an email or a text, or I've heard about it through others that you've talked to. I understand some of you have been a little bit frustrated with the pace of things around the church right now. We're coming out of COVID. It feels like trying to get back to what we think of as normal has been a little bit slow, and I agree with you. It's been slow. It's been challenging, and some of you have lost track of the vision or where we're going and what we're doing. And I empathize with your frustration because I feel the same way. Some of you have point blank said, look, we thought you were like a missions guy when we hired you. And we're not doing anything mission-related or in the community. You know what? You're right. You're right. But here's what we have been doing. In the metaphor of the boat, when I got here, the boat needed some repairs. We had holes in the boat. Like, we had literal holes in the boat. You know, remember the roof leaking back here and the roof that caved in over in the kids' room? We had some holes in the boat that had to be patched up. And so one of the benefits of COVID, it allowed us a chance to pull the boat in the harbor and just slow down a little bit and get some things right. And so we've spent the last couple of years doing repair work, literally on the building, but also figuratively in our own hearts, in our own lives, in our own ministry strategy. I encourage you, there's a billboard right over here, a bulletin board right over here that has, remember the construction crane? We've seen that graphic before. We talked a lot about that. That graphic is still over here. Most of us walk by it every Sunday and don't pay attention to it. I understand. But turn your brain on and look at it as you leave. You'll see a project list, a punch list of things that we were trying to accomplish, most of which we have now taken off the list. We've checked the box as done. But we're not quite done with that punch list yet. We're moving and working. And so I want to encourage you that while it feels like we're sitting in the harbor doing nothing and getting nowhere, we've actually done a lot of work to us as a church family, to our strategy, to our schedule, to the things that we do. And so you can go look at that list and kind of see where we are as we try to finish up the last few things on it. But as we finish up the last few things on that list, it's now time to start thinking about where we're going to take the boat. Who's tired of the boat being in the harbor all the time? Yeah, me too. So now, as a church family, it's time for us to start thinking about our vision. Our vision. What is our vision as a church? Now, I'm just going to put a timeline on this, but I want us thinking about it now. We're going to start next year, like we've done the last 2 years, with our 21 days of prayer and fasting. And my goal is to come out of the 21 days of prayer and fasting, which will start in January, so we're looking ahead. I want to come out of that 21 days as a church family with a written vision on what we're trying to do. But I want you thinking about it and praying about it now, because 21 days of having that conversation is just not long enough. Because our vision is our North Star. It's the direction that we're going, but the goal needs to be big enough that we may never actually achieve it. You see what I mean? It also needs to be specific enough where we have some sense of where we're going. So I'll give you two extremes. The goal of having growth in our family and filling the sanctuary again is a goal that is too small, and it's a vision that is not exciting. Do we need to grow? Yes. Would we like to see this place full? Yes. But that's not a long-term vision. That's a short-term goal. So that's too small, and it's just not big enough. It doesn't get anybody excited. I'll give you another example. If our vision is that we would take the gospel to the entire world, well, that sounds great. Clearly, that's where Matthew 28 says to do. But that's too nebulous. It's not defined enough that suddenly it doesn't help us make any kind of decisions or set any kind of course or direction for our boat. So the church universal will take the gospel to all nations, but we need to figure out what God has specifically for us as part of that overall vision for all churches in the world. So we need to find our North Star. God, where would you have us set sail? Where would you have us go? I do not have the answers to these questions, but I want us as a church family intentionally seeking God because it's time to pull the boat out of the harbor. So we have our vision, or we're looking for our vision. That's where are we going to go? We already have our mission. Our mission is to love God, love people, and make disciples. Our mission is the wind in our sails. It's the way that we get from A to B. And then we also have our values. They're on that poster that's all over the church under that graphic with our vision. We've got 8 or 9 statements there. They're our values. The values are our rudder. Our rudder keeps us on course as we aim for the North Star, which is our vision. So as before we get ready to pull the boat out of the harbor, it's time for us to begin to pray about our vision. I want you to pray about 2 things over the next several months. I want you to pray specifically what God has for us and what our vision can be. We've talked about that. The second thing is this. I want you to pray about how we can engage our community. If we could do one thing that engages our community and we put significant resources behind it, time, real estate, money, volunteers, all of that. One thing, if we could do one thing well that meets a genuine need in our community, and then over time, if we didn't do that thing, they would miss us. I want you to be thinking about, as a church family, what that one thing could be. It's a good question. It's a question I don't have the answer to, but God does. God knows the needs out there, and we can't do them all. But at least in the short term, as we set sail, as we pull out of the harbor, we got to do something first. And I want us to decide as a church family, what's the one thing, the one need that our community desperately needs that we can meet and that we can do well? It's a good question. So I want you to pray with me about that because it's time for us to set sail out of the harbor. I'm going to stretch this metaphor of the boat to its very limit. I apologize, but that's just what we're going to do. When you get on a boat, when you transition from the dock to the boat, it's actually one of the most dangerous times before you set sail. Why? Because there's a gap between the dock and the boat. And if you fall in the gap and fall in the water, a lot of bad things can happen, and you may never get the chance to set sail in the first place. So this morning, I want us as a church family, as we pray through these things, as we seek God and we answer these 2 questions, what is our North Star and what would you have us do first? That's the 2 questions. I want us to be aware of 3 gaps that we could fall into. 3 potential treacherous things that can mess us up. Gap number 1. It's the gap between us and God. It's the gap between man and God caused by sin. If you look at Jeremiah 50, God gives Jeremiah a vision or understanding of what awaits the Babylonians, these secular people that do not follow God, recognize God, have any relationship with Him at all. It says this in Jeremiah 50:35, "The sword of destruction will strike the Babylonians. It will strike the people of Babylon, her officials, her wise men. The sword will strike her wise counselors, and they will become fools. The sword will strike her mightiest warriors, and panic will seize them." Down in 39, "Soon Babylon will be inhabited by desert animals and hyenas. It will be a home for owls. Never again will people live there. It will lie desolate forever. I will destroy it as I destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah and their neighboring towns. No one will live there. No one will inhabit it." And he goes on and on and on through chapter 50. It's kind of like reading the book of Revelation. When Jesus arrives and he declares his authority, he sets all things right, and all of those who were rebellious to him, who did not follow him, are sent off to eternal punishment. It very much parallels Jeremiah 50 and the closing chapters of Jeremiah, as he gives Jeremiah the vision of what it means, or the ultimate end for those who do not follow God. We have to be careful how we read these verses, because sometimes we can read them victoriously as if we are a conquering army who has finally defeated the enemy and they finally got what was coming to them. If you read Jeremiah 50 or the book of Revelation with that attitude in your heart, then you do not understand the gospel and you do not understand grace. Because we are called to love others even when they are not like us, even when they are rebellious, even when they are challenging. And so as we read these times in Scripture where God sets forth his authority and sets things right, and many perish and are punished, oftentimes through eternity, if you're not reading that with a little bit of sadness in your heart, then I'm just telling you, you've missed the point of the gospel and you've missed grace. Because if you've isolated yourself so much in your shack in the desert that you don't know anybody that is meeting that level of destruction or that eternal punishment, then you've missed your purpose in life. I am going to have friends in hell, and that should bother you every day. If you don't have friends that are potentially destined for hell, then you're not living out Matthew 28. If all of your friends are Christians and think like you do, dress like you do, eat at the same places you do, then you've missed your purpose. We are called to engage the community and the world around us. That's one reason that we will not, like some of those other churches that I saw being built, we will not move this place or relocate. God has called us here to serve this community and all that he has put in this community. We are a beacon of light and of truth in this place. And we will not go and build our own shack in the desert somewhere because it's easier and more profitable and more comfortable. Our vision should be bigger than that, and our God is stronger than that. So the gap created by sin is something we need to be ever mindful of and recognize that we are people of grace. We are called to live out the gospel. We are called to be light in the darkness. And if we ever forget that purpose, that foundation, then God will stop moving in and among our people. If we are not actively sharing the gospel, then just as God told the people in Jeremiah, you have become useless. That word useless comes up a lot in Jeremiah. And if we are not actively living out the gospel and sharing it, then we have fallen in the gap and we've drowned before we ever got on the boat or pulled it out of the harbor. And so we have to be mindful that everything we do represents the gospel and displays the love and grace of Jesus. The second gap that we have to be mindful of, the gap between our church and our community. They think that we are the white church on the corner. And I'll make that real specific because our building's not painted white. They think that we are the church for white people that sits on the corner isolated from the rest of our community. Now, we know that that's not true. We know that we have a diverse family, but I'm just telling you, that's our reputation in the community. And so there is a big gap between us as a church family and our community right now. Part of that lands on my shoulders because we've done nothing in the last 2.5 years to engage our community. In fact, some of the few things that we had going on, I'll take responsibility. I'm the one that shut them down and closed them. We had reasons. I think all of those were steps of obedience, but I'll lay the responsibility at my feet. I did those things. At the end of the day, the buck stops here. And so consequently, whatever the justification, whatever the reasons, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, the reality is right now there is a huge gap between us and our community. And if that continues, we'll die. We'll die. And so we have to be mindful of the gap between us and our community. Some of us, many of us, don't even really know our community or the needs that are in it. And look, I'm not going to throw bombs at you and not accept my own. I'm learning too. I've only been part of Forest Park for a couple of years, and for 1.5 years of that, we were closed. And so I'm trying to schedule ride-alongs with the local police department. I want to see the community through their eyes. I'm trying to get to know local political leaders and other nonprofits and other church leaders. I want to understand this community as we seek to understand what are the needs in our community and how can we address them. What's the one thing that we can do well that addresses a real need in our community? It's a good question. I don't have the answers to it. But right now, I know the answer is currently we are doing little, if not nothing, and we've increased the gap between us and the community. And who led you through that process? Okay? Now, again, I think we've taken some steps of obedience, but that is the reality. Look at Jeremiah chapter 8. Jeremiah chapter 8, verses 21 and 22. Jeremiah says this, I hurt with the hurt of my people. I mourn and I am overcome with grief. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no medicine in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why is there no healing for the wounds of my people? Let's take that step by step. First of all, do you actually hurt for our community? Do you love our community? Do you even care about our community? If you don't, that's okay. Admit that right now, but then recognize the source of love, the source of empathy. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. God will give you a love and a passion for our community that you may or may not currently possess. But you've got to open yourself up for it and pray for it. Jeremiah, even though Jeremiah knows that he is obediently following God, he still hurts when his people walk in rebellion. He mourns and he's overcome with the sense of grief and the knowledge of their destiny. He says this, is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no medicine around? Is there no physician there? The answer is it doesn't matter, because when people try to solve their own problems, we fall woefully short. And so we can't abandon our community and expect them to solve their own problems and get better on their own. Those who walk in darkness, the only hope that they have is that light would shine in the darkness. But if we separate ourselves, if we fall into that gap between us and our community, then we have removed the light from the darkness, and then how can we ever expect them to change or improve? Is there no healing for the wounds of my people? The answer is yes, there is healing for the wounds of the people, and that healing is Jesus. We need to find ourselves engaged in problems that Jesus is the only answer for. We need to be the light in our community. And I freely admit right now that there is a big gap between us and them. And it's our fault. It's probably my fault. That's gap number 2. We need to be praying through these things. But then gap number 3. We have a huge gap in our church family. We have a huge gap in our church family. I'm going to need some help showing you this and helping you understand this. So I'm not going to make you do anything weird, but I do ask that you help me out. And so I want to start with anybody in their 50s. If you were in your 50s, would you join any member of our church in your 50s? Would you join me on stage? If you can make it, you can, yeah. Come on up here. No, come up here. Cheryl, I know you can't make it. Well, you're helping make a point, though, so I appreciate that. That's all right. All right, I think the only ones that we're missing out of this group, I know the Panlilios are on a trip. They're in their 60s. Oh, man, they're old. Gosh. And Cheryl, maybe possibly Fern. Fern's going to be late 40s, early 50s. You know, I'm not sure. Anyway, you get the point. Okay, this is 50s. If you're in your 40s, would you join us on stage? Y'all stay here. Yep. As far as I know Luke's at home. Brenda would probably be in that category. And anybody know exactly how old Fern is? She's in one of those two. You get the point. We're not going to throw Fern under the bus. Fern's 28, if you ever need to ask. Right, of course. Okay? If you're in your 40s, will you join me on stage? Join us on stage? Oh, I just did 40s. I'm sorry. If you're in your 30s, would you join us on stage? That's me. Okay, I know Becca's in this group. Who else are we missing in our 30s? That's Becca. That's about it, right? Yep. Okay. If you're in your 20s, a member of our church in your 20s, would you join us on stage? That was 30 years of generations. Normally that would be about 2 generations. They kind of overlap. 30 years. It's dangerous putting a timeline on this, but give me some grace here when I do this. I don't think 10 years is long enough, but 20 years is probably too long. So let's just, for the sake of a point, let's call it in 15 years. In 15 years' time, these guys and girls, men and women, are the matriarchs and patriarchs of our church. They're our deacons. They're our leaders. They're our Sunday school teachers. Many of them are already serving in some of those capacities. This is the generation that will lead us into and through Babylon. And so my question to you guys that are seated out there, the current leaders, the current matriarchs and patriarchs of our church, our deacons, our elders, our trustees, do you think these guys are ready? I'm one of them. I don't. I know I'm not ready. And so I'm not trying to draw a generational line here. I'm not trying to tell you that you're now irrelevant and that we don't care. Here's what I'm telling you. I want you to hear me clearly. I'm telling you guys that we desperately need you. We desperately need you. When we talk about multi-generational discipleship, I want you to ask for you guys out there, who in this group are you intentionally investing in? And then for those of us on the stage, who out there have you gone to them and asked, and point blank asked them to invest in you? Because it's pretty weird from their perspective to go, hey, Malachi, I know I'm like super holy, and so here I am to invest in you, and you should be honored. That's weird. But it's far more honoring if you pick one or two of them and say, wow, I've really noticed that you put your money where your mouth is, and I need help. Because I'm going to lead this church. This group right here is going to lead this church into whatever church looks like in 10, 15, 20 years. And the reality is right now we don't know because we are headed into Babylon. And everything's going to look different. It's going to feel different. And I wish I could tell you what that is. I don't know. But this is the group that we're counting on to lead us there, guide us there, and keep us faithful. But we have 25 years of decline in this church. We just went through 30 years of age range, and we've got what, 15-ish people up here? And far more sitting in the pews. And so we can't miss this opportunity. We desperately need the current leaders and the matriarchs and patriarchs of our church intentionally investing in and discipling us, because we're going to be here after you're gone, and we're going to be traveling through uncharted waters that maybe you have never experienced or thought would be the case. So Americans have a concept of retirement. We want to build our shack in the desert and disappear. That's fine. Do that personally, do that privately, but we cannot afford for you to retire from church. Do you think this group right now is spiritually ready to navigate the growing modern secular humanism that's coming our way? Right now, we're not ready. Do you think this group right here in front of you is prepared to lead and navigate through this church through whatever's coming over the next 10, 15, 20 years? Right now, we're not ready. Do you think this group of people standing in front of you right now is financially capable of keeping the doors open on this building? Right now, we're not ready. We need help. And so we cannot afford for you to disengage spiritually and throw in the towel and call in retirement. We need your leadership. We need your wisdom. We need your experience. Because we stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before us. And men and women on stage, we're in the presence of giants. So do not miss the opportunity that we have before us, because in 10, 15 years' time, we won't have that chance. The other thing I want you guys, I brought you up here on purpose because I want you to see this. You are the ones that will lead this church in the very near future. In the very near future. And in modern day church land, many of us don't get the chance to really lead in any significant way until we're in our 50s, 60s, or 70s. Well, we don't have time for you to mature over the next 30 years before you step into leadership. The stakes are high. It's serious. We're moving into Babylon. We're moving into something different. And if this church is going to be the beacon in this community that I believe God has called us to be, we, this generation out here, are depending on you to take up the mantle and continue what they will one day leave behind. It's discipleship. Discipleship is intentionally investing in the generations that come after us. That's why we let the kids sing in the choir this morning. Did they know the songs? No. Were they distracting? Yeah. Did it make moms nervous? Absolutely. Did it make dads laugh? Oh, yeah. But was it worth it to invest in a generation? Yes. Okay? Guys, we need you. We need you, and we cannot afford for you to disengage. Because of all the gaps that we could fall into, right now in the short term, this generational gap is the most dangerous for our church. And so we're going to seek multi-generational, multicultural, and relational discipleship as we prepare this generation to navigate into things that y'all could never imagine are coming. It's a pretty big gap. Thank you for making my point, guys. Thank you so much. So we're going to close just spending some time with God. We always try to bring you to a point of decision. I think the decision is a little bit different for everybody in the room, but it's this. Will you decide, I have decided, to do whatever God is asking me to do to help us close those gaps? Some of us need to ask, God, what do you have for me in the last decade of my life? How can I serve you? How can I follow you and leave a legacy behind that honors you and far outlives me? But some of us on the other end of the spectrum, we need to decide, has God called us here? And as we graduate college and get married and have kids, are we going to be committed to that call here? Or are we going to go somewhere else? It's not an either or. It's not that simple. If God's calling you, you go where God calls. But there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of leadership here. There's a lot of need here. And suddenly we find ourselves in the very near future dependent on 20-year-olds that in 10 years' time will be 30. It's a big gap. It's the reality of where we are. But our God is faithful. He has a plan for us. He is sovereign. He is powerful. And quite frankly, He is a miracle worker. And that's what it's going to boil down to, is we're going to need a miracle. But as we close the gap between us and our community, talking about the gospel that closes the gap between us and God, I'm confident that He can do the easiest of those three and close the generational gap. You see, they're all three related. They're all three connected to our vision. They're all three connected to our immediate short-term strategies. But we've got to be mindful of the gaps, or we're never going to get the boat out of the harbor. So God, we love you. We trust you. God, when I look behind, I'm so humbled by all that you've already done in our church and our church family and for us and through us. And Lord, when I look ahead and I look up the mountain that we're trying to climb, it feels so big and so overwhelming. Many would look at us and say that we are destined for failure by man's wisdom, but luckily we serve a God who is a miracle worker. So God, it is every Sunday, it is every Wednesday that we come into this place as a church family, anxiously anticipating what you are going to do and how you are going to move and work among us to raise up the leaders that you need, to engage the community with your good news, and to repair what is broken. And so God, give us a vision that's far bigger than ourselves. Give us the resources that we need to follow through with obedience. Lord, may we be light in the darkness of our community. And may we get out of the American mindset of retiring and building our shack in the desert by ourselves. And Lord, may we be engaged in your activity and what you're doing and what you've called us to until the day that we die. God, it's you that we serve, not ourselves. It's you that we trust because we are powerless to fix what is broken. And it's you who we serve because of how much you love us. So may we go out into a community, Lord, that is desperately in need of you and represent you well. God, we're going to sing one song as we close. I just pray that you continue to move and speak to us. Lord, if people have questions, let them be bold enough to ask their questions. Lord, if they need to spend time with you at the altar, let them come down and spend time with you. I pray that you would meet them there. But Lord, may we walk out of this place with confidence in you in spite of the circumstances that we face. Amen.
Jesus, I surrender all. To him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him in his presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. Please stand with me as we sing this next verse. All to Jesus I surrender. Make me Savior wholly thine. Let me feel your Holy Spirit. Truly know that thou art mine. I surrender all. I surrender all to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. Let's sing that chorus, I surrender. Oh, I surrender all. God, I surrender all to Jesus. I surrender. I surrender all. May God bless you. Have a great week.